Okay guys, we're going to be explaining some questions on the practice test for Unit 2. Let's begin with number 1. Which of the following passes through the point -9, -7 and is perpendicular to y equals 3x minus 4? So one thing we need to get from this is that they give us a point and they give us indirectly a slope because they tell us that our line is perpendicular to this line, which has a slope 3. So they do give us a point and they are giving us a slope. The point x1, y1 is -9, -7, and the slope that they give us is an opposite reciprocal of the slope of the line provided here. Because perpendicular means that you got to look at this slope and think the opposite reciprocal. So if it's a +3, you're going to change it to a negative, and whatever fraction it is, you flip it. So it's going to be a -1/3. So the slope is -1/3. So now we know the slope, now we know the point, which means we could write it in point-slope form. And of course, when we use this point-slope form, it's a good idea to rewrite it with blank spots. And we simply plug in our y1 value, which is -7. That goes right here. We plug in our slope, which we said was -1/3 right here. And plug in our x1 value, which is -9, which goes right here. And of course, we need to clean this up. And obviously, if you look at your multiple choice answers, none of them are in point-slope form, so they're all in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, which means that we need to change it, get y by itself, and get rid of those parentheses by distributing. So let's begin by changing the minus to plus on all of these. Now we're going to take the -1/3 and distribute it. -1/3 times x is -1/3 x. -1/3 times 9 is -3. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y and the +7. Final step would be to get rid of that 7 to get y by itself. Subtract 7, subtract 7. You will have y equals -1/3 x minus 10. This is your slope-intercept form equation, and here is your answer. Y equals -1/3 x minus 10, this guy right here. Moving on to number 2. All right, on this problem, we have to be careful with the instructions. It says use the second and last points. All right, so here's the second point, and here's the last point. We want to use those 2 points to write our prediction equation, and of course, it says also right here that the prediction equation should be in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b. So what could we do with 2 points? We could obviously label them xy, xy. This is your first point, this is your second point. And we could find the slope using the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Yeah, something we have to have memorized. When we apply the slope formula, I recommend doing the division and the subtractions first, then plugging in your values. 15, y1 is 12, x2 is 8, x1 is 2. So when we subtract 15 take away 12, we'll get 3 up on top. 8 take away 2, we get 6 on the bottom. Therefore, our slope is 1/2. Very important piece of information. So what could we do when we have a slope and we have some points? Well, we could write it in point-slope form. And when you use point-slope form, I recommend using blank spots and then plugging in your values. y2 is 15. Well, no, I'm sorry. Let's go with y1, not y2. Yeah, let me highlight so we don't get confused. We're using the first point only, not the second point. So let's plug in 12 for y. The slope we said was 1/2. Let's plug in x1, which is 2. And now we need to distribute the 1/2 into both terms. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times -2 is -1. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y, the minus the 12. We almost have it by itself. All we have to do now is get rid of that -12 by adding 12 and adding 12. Okay, so what do we have here? We have, we have y equals 1/2 x plus 11. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your prediction equation. That's what you're going to have to find on the multiple choice. And then in addition to that, they also wanted us, if you read the instructions carefully, it said to find the output for the given input 10. All right, so if you want to plug in the number 10 right in there, you'll get y equals 1/2 times 10 plus 11. So when we think, what is 1/2 times 10? That is 5. All right, so we have 5 plus 11. 5 plus 11, that is 16. So the output is 16. Okay, so we need to, first of all, find on the multiple choice the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 11. That's your prediction equation. And then also the input 10 gives you the output 16. I believe when you try to find this combo on your multiple choice, this equation is there, but it doesn't have the output 16, so you would have to select none of these, I believe, because you can't find both the equation and the corresponding output for the input 10. Let's take a look at this one. This one's interesting. It's nice and easy. I like these. It says find f of 1. That's function notation telling you to plug in 1 into this piecewise function. The question is, where are you going to plug in the 1? Onto this top one, onto the middle one, or the bottom one? It depends on your condition. So remember, 1 is the x value, the input that you're trying to put in. And is 1, you're going to use this top one if 1 is less than or equal to 0. No, it's not. You're going to use this middle one if 1 is between 0 and 2. And yes, the number 1 is between 0 and 2. Right, so we're going to be using this one right here. So the math that we're going to be doing is minus x plus 1. And of course, we are plugging in the number 1 right in there. So that makes it a -1 plus 1, which gives us the answer 0. So you need to type in that answer 0, hit enter, and you'll get the right answer. I would just put in the number 0. I wouldn't write f of 1 equals 0. Technically, you should be able to write f of 1 equals 0. I would just type in the answer 0. We have a piecewise function right here, and they are not asking us to write the actual function. They're asking us to find f of -1. So what does that mean? If I did have the function f of x, we would see where we plug in -1 into the top one, the middle one, or the bottom one. But we don't have the function. I mean, we could actually come up with the function, but the easier solution is to recognize that the graph represents every single answer that exists to the function. And they're asking us, if I were to plug in -1 into the x, what would my answer be? What would my y value be? So if I take -1 and plug it into x, that's as simple as going to your x-axis, going to -1, and asking yourself, where is the graph at? It's down here. You see, down here is the coordinate -1, comma, -2. So for the input -1, we get the output -2. So without doing any math, just visually looking at this, we know that the answer is -2. All you got to do is type in -2, hit enter, and you got the right answer. Moving on. What is the axis of symmetry of the above equation? Please type in your answer with no spaces. Axis of symmetry is x equals the h value of your vertex. And remember, you always think opposite on h, so you would type in x equals -4. This is your answer. Hit enter, you will get it right. Now, if you just type in -4, that's incorrect, because -4 is just a number. But if you actually want, on a xy plane, if you actually want a vertical line going right through your vertex, then you know it's going to be x equals a certain value. X equals h. In this case, x equals -4. Probably should have drawn that vertical line over here on the -4 side. Anyway, I hope you understand. Please type in x equals your h value, which in this case is -4. Says, which is the correct vertex and pattern to use from that vertex? Okay, what am I reading here? Which is the correct vertex and pattern to use from that vertex if you were graphing the above equation? So if we were graphing this equation, our vertex would simply be opposite on h, so that'd be a -3. Take k for what it is, +5. There's my vertex. And what pattern am I going to be using? That depends on your a value. The a value is 2. So we know we cannot use 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9 pattern. We actually need to modify according to this new a value of 2. So I need to multiply the outputs by 2. So what is my new pattern? It's 1, 2, 2, 8, 3, 18. Now, one thing that might be confusing to you guys is I put a dash between the numbers. So right here, 1, 1, don't think that that's a negative sign. That's like a dash, right? Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I hope you guys understand. 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. That's the a value of 1. That's a pattern for the a value of 1. So if we're looking for the vertex, -3, +5, that is either this one or this one, okay? And we need the pattern 1, 2, 2, 8, 3, 18, and of course I put dashes between the numbers. So which one is that? That is 1, 2, 2, 8, 3, 18. This is it. This is your correct answer. I hope we understand that. Let's move on. Which equation represents the above parabola? Well, I should read the below parabola because it's down here. Anyway, in order for us to work backwards from a graph to a parabola, we need to understand what the vertex is. The vertex right there is -2, -1, 2, 3, 4. So the vertex is -2, -4. What else do we need? We need the a value. Now, we know that the a value of 1 would give us the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. The a value of 1 gives us a pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. So from the vertex, do I go 1 over and 1 up? No, I don't. It's actually 1 over and 2 up. So you should automatically think, well, maybe instead of the a value being 1, it's actually 2, which it is, right? And you could even verify that further by saying, okay, it used to be 1, 1, but now it's 1, 2, right? Because if you multiply that by 2, it'll give you 2. If you go 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, obviously that's not 4, it's 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I multiply the 4 by 2, that'll give me that 2, 8 that I have there. So absolutely the a value is not 1, the a value is 2. So now that we know our a value, which is 2, our h, which is -2, and our k, which is -4, and maybe I should have put these in red, we could write our equation in vertex form. So you could write it out, y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k, and h, k. You could write it out and then rewrite it with blank spots, y equals blank spot x minus blank spot squared plus blank spot. And then you plug in your values. The h value is -2, the k value is -4, and the a value is 2, okay? The minus minus changes to plus plus, clean it up, right? You don't even need a plus negative, you could just write a minus sign. So here's our final equation, y equals 2 parentheses x plus 2 squared minus 4, okay? And that is none of these. You don't have to do all this work. I mean, you could just like start writing it out. If you think about it, y equals, we did say that the a value was 2, and when you do the x, don't do the minus. If you want to write it all out at once, think opposite on h. So from the origin, if you go 2 this way, that's -2, but think opposite, that would be a plus 2, close parentheses squared. And then the k value is -1, 2, 3, 4. So right there, the k value, write it as it is. So it's up to you if you want to write your vertex form equation, rewrite it with blank spots, plug it in, and then simplify it, or you could write it all at once, being very careful, thinking opposite on the h. So -2 is actually a plus 2 in there when you write it in. And obviously the k value, -4, you write it as it is. None of these are correct. Of course, on the test Friday, you probably will have one of these instead of none of these. Which of the following is the correct inequality? So on inequalities, let's first begin by identifying what kind of line we have. Here's a y-intercept. That is the b value of 2, okay? And the slope, you're actually going down 1, 2, 3, and then going over 1, 2. So the slope is down 3 over 2. So with that bit of information, we could write the equation. It's y equals -3/2 x. Now notice I didn't put the equal, plus 2. because obviously an inequality is an area, so we're shaded below, not above. So if you're shaded below, you're going to write a less than symbol, okay? So this is a less than symbol. Now, if your graph of the line was actually solid, you'd put a solid line underneath that inequality. But it's a dotted line, so I do not put a solid line underneath that inequality. So there's my inequality right there. Let's look for it. You know, as I look through these, they all have a +1. That must have been a mistake on my part. Let's just say that your answer is right here. I want to go back and change those multiple choice answers. This is your answer right here. Make sure that it does not have a solid line underneath it. I will be changing these, so this is your answer. Make sure it does not have a solid line underneath it because this is not a solid line. It is a less than because we shade below that dotted line, not above. If it would have been above, it would have been a greater than. So this is your answer. Ignore these right now. They'll be different on the actual practice quiz. We have another inequality right here, and obviously it's shaded above. So right off the bat, I know that it has to be a greater than symbol, greater than, not greater than or equal to, because this is not a solid graph. This is a dotted graph. But we do have above being shaded, so it's a greater than symbol. Anyhow, let's see which one is the correct one. Let's begin by stating the vertex. This vertex right here is the coordinate -1, +4, which we now know are h and are k. And let's identify the a value of this function. And obviously it's an absolute value function. If you forgot about that, just by looking at your multiple choice answers, you'll see that it's an absolute value function. And we know that absolute value functions, the a is kind of like the slope from the vertex. You're going down 1, 2, 3 over 2. So the a value is down 3 over 2. So let's plug it into our absolute value form. And we will have y equals -3/2, open absolute value, x minus h, which happens to be a -1, close absolute value, plus k, which happens to be 4. And let's clean this up a bit. The minus minus changes to plus plus, and there's our answer. However, I put an equal sign when it should have been an inequality, so let's fix that. We did say that the inequality, it's being shaded above the graph, so that's a greater than symbol. And we did say that this is not a solid graph, so this does not need a solid line underneath it. So this right here is my answer. Y is greater than -3/2, y is greater than -3/2, x plus 1 plus 4. That is the answer. Y is greater than -3/2, x plus 1 plus 4. And voila, that's your correct answer. On this particular question, we're talking about the different transformations that the original parent graph, y equals x squared, goes through to get to this new g of x graph, 2 parentheses x plus 4, close parentheses squared minus 6. So it'd be a good idea to take a look at our notes. So here are our notes from this section on transformations, and it says right here in our notes, to describe transformations from the original parent graph to the new graph, we must go through each of these possibilities in this order. Does it get reflected over the x-axis? That's the first question. If the a value is negative, then it does get reflected over the x-axis. Does it get vertically stretched or compressed? And by what factor? That depends on your a value. If your a value is closer to 0, like a fraction that's less than 1, you call that a vertical compression. It makes it wider. But if the a value is further away from 0, greater than 1, like the a value of 2 or 3, then it's called a vertical stretch. And last but not least is your h and k shift, where it says describe the translation, the shifts, left or right according to h, but think opposite of what you see, and then up or down according to k. You take that for what it is. So let's go through those possibilities on this particular question. Let's begin by asking ourselves, does it get reflected over the x-axis? Yes. So the first transformation that you should read on your multiple choice answers is it gets reflected over the x-axis because of the negative sign. Then the second thing that you would have to read on your multiple choice answers is this parabola gets vertically compressed because the a value is 1/2. It's less than 1, which causes a vertical compression, which makes it wider. So it gets reflected over the x-axis, it gets vertically compressed by 1/2, and then it shifts 3 units to the right, because you got to think opposite, and 4 units up. Those are your actual transformations from the original parent graph to this new h of x graph. Once again, What are the different transformations? It gets reflected over the x-axis. It gets vertically compressed by 1/2. It gets shifted 3 to the right and 4 up. Okay? Let's move on. Which of the following absolute value equations is represented on this graph? I apologize for the blurry graph, but I think if we zoom in close enough, we'll be able to identify the vertex, which is the coordinate 0, 1, 0 on the x, 1 on the y. Okay? And we could also identify how much you rise and run, because remember, it's a v, not a parabola, it's not a u, it's a v, which means it's an absolute value function. And I hope we all remember what absolute value functions look like. And the a value is kind of like the slope, where you go down 1, 2 over 1, 2, 3. So the a value is down 2 over 3. We have the absolute value of x minus h. Now, what is h? H is the x value of your vertex, which is 0. So you don't need a number right there. And then we have plus k, plus the k value of your vertex, which is 1. So our simplified function will look like this. Y equals negative 2/3 absolute value x, close absolute value. You don't need the minus 0, plus 1. Okay? That is your absolute value equation. Let's look for it, and that would be this guy right here. Y equals negative 2/3 absolute value of x plus 1, right there. Let's move on. Again, I apologize for the blurry pics, but I think we could see what the vertex is. The vertex is negative 1, negative 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So the vertex is negative 2, positive 4, which is the h and k value. H, K, which we need to write our equation. And let's look at the a value. Now, the a value of a parabola is not like the slope. The a value of the parabola that has an a value of 1, then we know it has a pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. So let's take a look at the pattern from the vertex to get to the other coordinates. 1 over, 1 down. So far, so good. 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So I know that this is the a value of negative 1. Why negative 1? Because it is opening down. Again, you could verify if it's 1 by doing 1, 1, 2, 4, and even 3, 9 in this case. So this is the a value of negative 1 because it's opening down. And now we could write out our vertex form equation. And you could rewrite it with blank spots and then plug in your values if you want to be really safe, or you could just write it all at once. Y equals a is negative 1. You don't even need a negative 1, you could just put a negative sign. And then x, now instead of writing minus h, we're going to think opposite of getting to this position, which would be a positive 2 instead of a negative 2. So in here you'd have a plus 2, close parentheses, squared. And then we have the k value of 4. You take that for what it is, and we are done. That is your answer. That is right. That's not it. That is right. Well, that's not it either. Apparently, that would be none of these. Man, there's a lot of none of these on this practice test. Moving on. Hopefully this one's not a none of these. Anyway, state the range. Oh, that one's easy. The range are your y values. So you'd say y is, what's your lowest y value of this parabola? It looks like negative 4. It's at negative 4 and above. That's greater than or equal to negative 4. Let's check out the next one. Which of the following represents the above graph? Okay, well, we know this is a v, not a u, so it's not a parabola. It is an absolute value function. And we should recognize that the vertex right here is a coordinate 1, comma, negative 1, okay? And we should also recognize that the a value of this pretty wide absolute value function is kind of like the slope. You go up 1 over 2, so the slope, not the slope, but the a value, which is kind of like the slope, is up 1 over 2. So you have 1/2, open absolute values, x minus h, x minus that h value of 1, close parentheses, plus k, which would be plus the k value of negative 1. So instead of me writing plus negative 1, I'm just going to write a minus 1 right there, minus 1, okay? So there's my answer. Y equals 1/2, absolute value, x minus 1, minus 1. However, this is not just an equation, it's an inequality. Obviously, the answers are shaded up here. All the answers are up here, which means greater than. So instead of an equal sign, we're going to have a greater than symbol. Y is greater than 1/2 x minus 1 minus 1. Now, why did I not put a greater than or equal to? If this would have been a solid line, then yes, I would have put a solid line underneath that inequality. So right off the bat, it can't be this one because that's greater than or equal to. Okay, so which is the correct answer? Y is greater than 1/2 x minus 1 minus 1. It looks like this one is the one to select. Find the slope of the line passing through those 2 points. All right, well, let's label them. Let's write our slope formula. Let's plug in our values. And when you plug in, I always recommend leaving blank spots, and then your y2 is 0, your y1 is -3, your x2 is -2, and your x1 is +2. So we could see that that will change to a plus plus, giving you a 3 up on top over a -4 on the bottom. So our slope is -3/4. So we don't want to leave a negative on the bottom. Either put it out in the front or in the middle. Now, if we look at our multiple choice answers, there is no -3/4, so this would be none of these are correct. Moving on. It says write the equation of a line that has a slope -2 and crosses the y-axis at -3. So what are they giving you here? They are giving you a slope, and they're also giving you a b value. It crosses the y-axis. So they give you a m and they give you a b. You could plug it into y equals mx plus b. So we're going to have y equals -2x plus -3. So I would just write a -3 instead of a plus -3. And this is your answer right here, y equals -2x minus 3. Moving on. Write an equation in point slope form that is perpendicular. So when I tell you perpendicular, what I'm doing is I'm indirectly giving you a slope, because a perpendicular line to this line right here, this line has a slope -1/2. So indirectly, I'm telling you that our slope will have the opposite reciprocal of this slope right here, which means +2. So our slope is +2. After you get your slope, you never need to look at this equation again. Who cares about the -7? We don't even look at this anymore. We already know that our slope will have a perpendicular slope to that one, which is +2. So what else do they give us? They give us a point, which is x1, y1, which is -1, 2. So what do we have here? We have a point and we have a slope. The easiest thing to do would be to write it in point slope form, and that's exactly what they're asking us to do, write it in point slope form. So what is point slope form? It's y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1, and we're going to use blank spots. Y minus blank spot equals blank spot parentheses x minus blank spot, and let's plug in our y1 value of 2, our m value of 2, and our x1 value of -1, which we need to change to a plus plus because minus minus changes to positive. So there is our point slope form equation. Y minus 2, slope 2, x plus 1. This is the correct answer right here. Okay, let's move on. This one's a little more entertaining. They want us to write it in slope-intercept form, not point slope form. So right off the bat, you could eliminate this guy. That's in point slope form. You want it in y equals mx plus b, maybe this one, maybe that one, maybe none of these, right? So what do we have here? They give us a slope, they give us a point. Because they give us a point and a slope, let's write it in point slope form, which is that right there. And we're going to plug it in with blank spots. And our y1 value, if we look at x1, y1, our y1 value is -3. Our m value is 4/5. And our x1 value is 10. So there's our point slope form equation. And obviously they want it in slope-intercept form. That's what it's asking for right here, to write in slope-intercept form. So we want y equals mx plus b. So let's distribute the 4/5 times x. That'll be a 4/5 x. Distribute 4/5 times -10. That'll be a -40 over 5. And 40 over 5 does reduce or does divide and give you the answer 8. So let me rewrite what I have here. I have y plus 3, because the minus minus changes to plus plus, equals 4/5 x minus 40 divided by 5 is 8. Final step, get that 3 out of there, we have our equation, our answer, y equals, this canceled out, 4/5 x minus 11. Y equals 4/5 x minus 11 is right there. Write an equation in slope-intercept form that has the slope -2/3 and the x-intercept at 6. So we really need to think about this here, guys. What are they giving us? Obviously, they're giving us a, slope, which is -2/3, and they're also giving us a point. But we need to understand that the point is an x-intercept. What is an x-intercept? It's where your line will cross the x-axis, and they tell you that it crosses at 6. So you may need a visual, right? So on the xy plane, it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So what is this point that they're actually giving you? It's the coordinate 6, 0, okay? So they're giving you a point, 6, 0, and they're giving you a slope, -2/3. Since you have a point and a slope, you could go for point-slope form and then change it to what they want, slope-intercept. So point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m parenthesis x minus x1. Notice that I left blank spots as I said it. So y minus y1, your y1 value is 0, your x1 value is 6. So y1 is 0. Your m value we said was -2/3, and your x1 value was 6. Okay, so we have this point-slope form equation, but we need to change it to slope-intercept form. How do we do this? We need to distribute the -2/3 times x. That'll be -2/3 x. And then -2/3 times -6. A negative times a negative is a positive. And you could just multiply the 2 times 6. That'll be a 12 up on top, and 3 times 1, 3 on the bottom. And of course, we have a y minus 0, which is just a y. That's all we have. And all we could do now is simplify this number. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So your final answer is y equals -2/3 x plus 4. And if you look for that answer on the multiple choice, it is apparently this one, y equals -2/3 x plus 4. So on this one, they want us to write the equation of the line that passes through the coordinate -8, -7. Those are x1, y1 value, and is perpendicular to the equation 4x minus 3, y equals 4x minus 3. Now when I say something is perpendicular, I'm indirectly giving you the slope. The slope is the opposite reciprocal of what you see here. So the slope is indirectly given to you as -1/4. And now that you know the slope, and now that you know the point over here, you could write it in point-slope form. So point-slope form is right there. I recommend rewriting it with blank spots and then plugging in your values. The m value is -1/4. That goes in front of the parentheses. The y1 is -7. The x1 is -8. And we could change those minuses to plus. And of course, we want it in slope-intercept form based on the multiple choice answers here. So we're going to have to distribute -1/4 times x. That's -1/4 x. -1/4 times 8. That's -8/4. If you multiply the -1 times 8, that's -8 up on top. And we have the 4 times the 1 on the bottom. That'd be a 4 on the bottom. And we have the equal sign. We have the y plus 7 on this side. What could we do? The 8 divided by 4, that's really just a 2. So you might as well write that as a 2. -2, that is. So we're going to subtract 7 here, subtract 7 over there. I know it's getting kind of messy. I hope this makes sense. Y equals -1/4 x minus 9. Because the -2 take away 7 is a -9. So this is our slope-intercept form equation that is perpendicular to that line that passes through -8, -7, which would be the answer, this one right here. Moving on to the next question. On this question, they're asking us to write the equation of the line that passes through these 2 points. And they want us to write it in slope-intercept form, and we need to type in our answer. So we get 2 points. We get an x and a y, an x and a y. This is your first point. This is your second point. So we will use the slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And when we use it, I recommend doing the division and the subtractions first, then plugging in your actual y2 value of 6, your y1 value of negative 6, your x2 value of 4, and your x1 value of negative 2. And whenever you have the minus minus, change to plus plus. What we have here, bless you, what we have here is 12 over 6, which means that our slope is actually 2. All right, so we have the slope, and guess what? We also have some points. So if I have a point and I have a slope, we might as well write it in point-slope form. So there's your point-slope form equation. It would be a good idea to rewrite it with blank spots. You got y minus blank spot equals blank spot parentheses x minus blank spot, and let's plug in the y1 value of negative 6. Plug in the slope we just found, which was 2. Plug in the x1 value of negative 2 right in there. Change minus minuses to plus plus, and then simplify because you want it in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. Bring down the equal sign. Bring down the y plus 6. Final step will be to subtract 6 and subtract 6, giving you your final slope-intercept form equation. Y equals 2x minus 2. So you have to type that in with no spaces between your terms. Y equals 2x minus 2. Moving on to this question right here. Which of the following inequalities represents the graph? So you got to look at this graph. I know it's kind of blurry. I apologize. You got to first identify what the line would be in terms of y equals mx plus b. So your m from here to here or from here to here is up 1 over 3. So the m is up 1 over 3. And the b value, the y-intercept, is at the value of 3. So we know that the line itself is y equals 1/3 x plus 3. However, it's not just a line, it's shaded above, which means that the answers are above, which means that we would have to put a greater than symbol right here. So y is greater than 1/3 x plus 3. And it's not just a greater than symbol, it's also an or equal to. So greater than or equal to, you do need that solid line underneath the inequality because this line was solid right from the start. So that's your correct inequality that you want. Y is greater than or equal to 1/3 x plus 3. And that is obviously not on these multiple choice answers. This one looks like it, but it's greater than, not greater than or equal to. That is a solid line, which means you need a solid line underneath that inequality. So this would be another one of those questions where none of these are correct is the answer. Next question, they want us to write the inequality again. This one's interesting because it's a parabola. Not only that, when we write a parabola, we need to identify the a value. If the a value is 1, it's going to have the pattern 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. In this case, we're thinking negative 1 because it's opening down. But does it really go 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9? No way. Instead of 1, 1, it only goes 1 over, and it looks like not even halfway. It looks like half of the half. So 1 over and then 1/4 of the way down. Okay? So that would imply that the a value is negative 1/4. Okay? And what about that vertex? The vertex right here, let me write it. Vertex is the coordinate 0, 3. So of course, when we write our vertex form equation, y equals a, which is negative 1/4, open parentheses, x minus h. So the minus h is going to be a minus 0, but you don't need a minus 0 in there. And then plus k plus 3. Now, since you don't need a minus 0, you don't even need the parentheses, right? It's pointless to have parentheses x squared on the outside. You could just write x squared. So let's make this look nicer. Y equals negative 1/4 x squared plus 3. There's your vertex form equation. But it's not an equation. It's an area that's shaded above. Now, that means I need to replace this equal sign with an inequality. And since it's shaded above, it's a greater than. If it were shaded below, that would have been a less than. So it's shaded above, so that's a greater than. If it were shaded below, that'd be a less than. Not only that, this is not a solid parabola. This is a dotted parabola, so it does not have a solid line underneath the inequality. That is your answer. Y is greater than negative 1/4 x squared plus 3, which is right here. Another one of inequalities. So we have another parabola right here, and it is shaded above, so we're going to be using a greater than symbol. When we analyze this parabola, we need to identify the a value. The a value, if it were 1, it would be 1 over 1 up, and then it'd be 2 over 4 up, and so on and so on. But when I, from the vertex, go 1 over, it doesn't even look like I go 1 up, it only goes halfway up. So that tells us that the a value is probably 1/2. Now the vertex itself, the vertex is the coordinate 1 for the x, 1 for the y on the vertex. So the h is 1, the k is 1. And now we'll be able to write our equation for the parabola. So we would normally write y equals, and I'll leave the blank spot for equals because it's going to be a greater than symbol. As a matter of fact, we could just write it greater than or equal to, because this is a solid parabola. You're going to have a solid line underneath that inequality. And why did I write greater than? Because it's shaded above. If it were shaded below, that would be a y is less than. But it's greater than because it's shaded above the parabola, and it is solid, so I need a solid line underneath that inequality. Now we did say that the a value was 1/2. Then you open up the parentheses, x minus h, so that's going to be a minus 1, close parentheses squared, and then plus k plus 1. So there is your inequality for this graph. And that would be this equation or inequality right there. Y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x minus 1, close parentheses squared, plus 1. Let's move on to the next one. Another inequality problem, but we have a line here. We don't have a parabola. Okay, so the equation of this guy would normally be from here to here. It looks like I go up 2 over 3. So the slope is up 2 over 3. The y-intercept, it actually crosses at -4. So the b value is -4. So if I wanted to write my equation, that would be y equals 2/3 x minus 4. However, it's not just a line, y equals 2/3 x minus 4. It's an inequality, and it is shaded above. So if it's shaded above, we're going to have a greater than symbol. And it is a solid line, not a dotted line. So I need a solid line underneath that inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our answer. Y is greater than or equal to 2/3 x minus 4. And apparently, none of these would be our answer, because this would have to be a -4 in order for that to work. On this question, they're asking us to state the y-intercept of the following parabola. Okay, so the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Sometimes you'll be able to see where it crosses, but sometimes you have to use algebra to determine where it crosses. Okay, and I hope we remember this from Algebra 1. To find the x-intercept, we set y equal to 0 and solve. Okay, that's just something that we should know. Also, to find the y-intercept, we set x equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so if we do take a look at this parabola, we first need to come up with the equation. All right, let's say that this was called g of x, and I told you, what is g of -2? G of -2 would be that coordinate at 0. So g of -2 is 0. If I were to say, what is g of -3? G of -3 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because this is a coordinate -3, 6. Now that means that the input -3 gives me the output 6. So I want the y-intercept, which is technically saying g of 0. Where is your parabola going to cross the y-axis, right? We need to figure that out. In order to do that, we need to come up with an actual equation first. So the actual equation, it's opening down, so that means that the a value is negative. And if it were -1, it would go 1 over and 1 down, and that doesn't happen. 1 over 1 down doesn't happen. It's actually 1 over and 2 down. So that means that the a value is -2. And of course, your vertex is the coordinate -4, +8. So you know your h is -4, you know your k is +8, and now you're able to write your equation. Y equals -2, open parentheses, x minus h, which is a minus -4, which changes to a +4 squared, plus k, which is +8. There is your equation. Now, if you actually wanted to find the y-intercept, this is your y-axis. What x value is this y-axis? That's the x value of 0. So if you were to plug in 0, it'll tell you where the coordinate will be at, right? Plug in 0, get out an answer. So you're going to plug in 0 right into the x. So you're going to have y equals -2 with the 0 right there, +4 squared plus 8. So what is 0 plus 4? That's 4. What is 4 to the second power? 4 times 4 is 16. And then 16 times -2, that is -32, right? 16 times -2. 16 times -2, we get -32. And we still have the +8. -32 plus 8 is -24. So the y-intercept is at -24. So technically, if I ask you for the y-intercept, you could give me the coordinate 0, -24, or you could just type in -24. That's the location of where it's going to cross the y-axis.